like to introduce this morning my friend, dear friend, Daniel Greenwolf. Friend, performer, a bunch of different things, but he'll tell you about that.
Thank you. I'm going to steal it from you.
You got it.
I like her. This is slightly unusual for me. Normally, I am completely speaking off of my brain, and today I've decided to write in advance, which is very confusing for me, so forgive me if I sound at all idiotic. That's what I do. Good morning, as Carli said. My name is Daniel Greenwolf. I'm a professional magician, the general manager of the Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair, an openly pansexual man in a loving polyamorous relationship, and a 30-year-old second-generation Wiccan. Wicca, for those who don't know, is a polytheistic religion that focuses primarily in nature. We do accept and embrace the term witches. There are no warlocks in what we do. That's another term for something entirely different, which is not very comforting. But that is what we hold on to, and there's a lot of beliefs that go into that. But it is definitely what could be considered a counterculture religion. Both of my parents, Judy and David, are Wiccan, and they started their lives being raised as Catholics. They started learning about the craft in high school with their separate teachers, and then in 1977, they began learning together under Gavin von Frost, who were some of the prominent, they were outspeakers about Wicca, and some of the prominent teachers of the 60s and 70s. But they also continued to learn from every source and teacher possible. Back in the 60s and 70s, a common principle of Wicca, which is a Hermetic principle, which is to know, to will, to dare, and to keep silent. Emphasis was seemingly on keeping silent. Pagan religions in the 20th century weren't met with open arms by mainstream society. And my parents faced a lot of persecution with their choice, even from their own families. So once my brothers and I started understanding the goings-on of the world, my parents needed to decide, as so many parents do, how to bring religion into our lives without scaring us or setting us up for a life of spiritual disappointment. But also within that choice was a battle against their own egos. Do they let us choose our own path? Or do they make us walk the path they themselves have tread? Certainly the latter would be easier, as they can explain everything about Wicca and give us all the materials we could possibly need because they're readily at hand. And also, they know their path to be their own true path. So why would their children want to follow a true path? What if we question their long-held beliefs? Thankfully, my parents decided to take the chance and give us the opportunity they never had. See, I'm not certain exactly when they started with my older brothers, but I remember being about 7 or 8 when my parents laid out the idea of religion. Now, we had taken part in rituals before that, but Wicca seemed more like a family gathering kind of thing. Like Thanksgiving, but with more statues and robes. It wasn't until my parents spoke with me about what it all meant that I understood it to some deeper extent. They explained that they believed in a higher power that was separated into 2 forms, a god and a goddess, and that the goddess created the god and the universe and all that there is. This all seemed rather believable to an 8-year-old. I was very big into fantasy, and I knew about the idea of God, even if not the specifics. But then my parents hit me with the bombshell. They may not be right about the god and goddess. Wicca may not be the religion I want to follow, and I should make the choice for myself. It's a heck of a thing of a responsibility for an 8-year-old. It would have been so much easier for my parents to say, "Hey, we're all Wiccan, mazel tov," and move on. But my parents knew that one's true path is one that is discovered, not force-fed. So my parents started giving me access to all the knowledge they could about world religions, even going as far as having me read the Bible, attend Mass, go to powwows, go to pagan events that talk about different faiths. They only have 3 stipulations. They said you could be Jewish if you wanted, but it's going to be tough. Once you read about it, you'll see. They were right. You can study about Jehovah's Witnesses, but none of us are getting up that early on a Saturday to give watchtowers to strangers with you, so that's out. And you can't be a Scientologist because we can't afford to give that kind of money to Xenu. So aside from that, the table was open. See, my parents went through this with all my brothers, and we all chose different paths despite learning from the same source. Two of my brothers leaned towards agnostic or atheist. I chose Wicca, and my little brother, I'm pretty sure, worships professional wrestling. But we all made that choice, and our decisions evolved over the years for each of us. And my parents never condemned that. They wanted us to ask questions. They believed that a faith unchallenged by doubt is a faith not worth having. Now, being a teenager with an abnormal religion by Connecticut standards was not easy. But my parents also instilled in me something that is important when given such a choice: the power of debate, the power of understanding and conviction. They taught us that we were going to face opposition, and the best way to stop that opposition was with information. Not simply screaming at someone who asks if I worship Satan, or trying to get everyone to be Wiccan with me, but whenever someone asks, simply giving them the right knowledge. So when I was 12, and my 7th grade language arts teacher asked me about the pentacle that I wore around my neck, she was so impressed by my explanation that she had me give a talk on Wicca to the entire class the next day. I also performed at Beltane festivals and took part in drum circles as a teenager, but the path was not without its struggles. In 1966, The Craft hit movie theaters. The Craft, for those who never saw it, you're the lucky few, is a movie about teenagers who discover Wicca. It is schlock. It is a piece of painful, painful cinema that's not even good by normal cinema standards. But it hit a nerve with people. People ate it up. And soon, I was an 11-year-old classmate who constantly got asked to change the color of my hair. Or I was asked by my other classmates why I didn't wear more black, or if I was going to curse them. It was a struggle. But I don't honestly remember ever losing my cool over that stuff. It was just annoying. Even when I was in junior high school, and my chemistry teacher, who came across as an antiquated, sexist, condescending, offensive creature, took me aside and told me before class one day to hide the pentacle under my shirt during his class. Being 16, I pointed the crucifix around his neck and said, "Are you going to hide that during class?" He said, "I just don't want to deal with that satanic stuff in my room." And I, oddly politely for a 16-year-old, I admit, mentioned how I don't follow or believe in Satan, and if he is going to display his religion, then I have the right to display mine. He dismissed me and sent me back to my seat, but never brought up the topic of religion again, and I continued to wear my symbols proudly. That was the only class I ever got to see it, by the way. I'd like to think growing up with any religion is not easy, even the mainstream faiths. But what my parents did for my brothers and me gave us more than belief. They gave us knowledge. They gave us the will to discover for ourselves what worked. They gave us the ability to dare to question all beliefs along with our own. And perhaps, most importantly, they taught us that we no longer had to keep silent about what we believe, as long as we could back it up with what we believe. I now face a whole new set of challenges as I help to raise a new generation. I have a hand in bringing up a beautiful 4-year-old and 5-year-old girl who will have an interesting enough time explaining to their peers why they have a mommy, a daddy, and a Danny who all live together and all love each other without having to deal with the religion questions. But I think no matter what we choose, I know I'll be taking the cue from my parents in teaching these children to know, to will, to dare. And to be honest, I don't think any of us can teach them to keep silent anyways, so why bother? Blessed be you.
So our first question today is, can you think of an instance where you had the choice to educate someone or argue with them about something you believe in, and how did you handle it?
I think that when it comes to discussing religion, it's not just the other person, whether it turns into a discussion or an argument. I have a very weird example from when I was younger. I grew up in Waterbury. And if anybody's ever walked around the town green in Waterbury, you know that street preachers are a very interesting society. And in one particular instance, I was walking around with my friend at the time, Danny Troche, who, awesome guy, I love him dearly, still in my life now, we kind of phase in and out. He was also Wiccan. But he grew up in a very different set of circumstances than I did. He didn't have the support that I did when I was growing up. So he was always very confrontational. And in one particular instance, we're walking down the town green, and I'm walking next to him. To give you kind of an idea, Danny wore all black. He wore a big silver pentacle on his chest. I also wore a pentacle on my chest. I also wore several other pendants. If you've ever been to Salem, Mass, they have these t-shirts and these sweatshirts with a big orange-yellow pentacle on them. They've got like 4 elements, and then spirit up top. It says blessed be. It's a beautiful shirt. My mother has one. I have one. I performed there for years. I was wearing that. So the pentacle's about this big on my chest. And we're walking down the street, and the street preacher sees the both of us, comes right up to us, looks at me, looks at him, and he yells at him about how he is going to burn for eternity. It's as if I wasn't even there. He started arguing, and of course Danny just started going back and forth with him, and they go back and forth and back and forth. And it really didn't get anywhere because it's not gun. But it did point something out to me. If he had come to me saying that I was going to burn for eternity, I would have looked at him and go, well, that's interesting. Why so? And we would have talked about it. Because I was ready for that, because that's when my parents brought me up. My parents invited Jehovah's Witnesses into our home whenever they knocked on our door. Whenever they knocked on our door. My mother was not as big of a fan, but she was very amused by it. But my father came in, and he wasn't doing it to belittle them. He was doing it to discuss religion.
Your father was very diplomatic.
My father was very diplomatic, but my father was a playful spirit, if anything. He was an embodiment of Coyote in so many ways. But he was also someone who was very, very interested in other people's feelings. My ex-father-in-law, who was very, very right-wing, one of the most popular conversations at my parties was that my father went out back with my father-in-law, and they spoke for 3 hours about religion. One of my friends, Carrie Collins, is still scarred by the experience. But not because it was bad and they were arguing, but because they were just having a conversation. And that's not just the person, because my ex-father-in-law, I can say he's my ex-father-in-law now, so I can say it, was a very angry person. I don't have to be diplomatic about that. So why? Why do we discuss instead of argue? I think it starts with us. We don't let it get to that point. Because even if you're vegan, or you're Wiccan, or you're you, or you have a fluid gender, we decide the conversation. We decide the debate, not somebody else. I could go on for a long time about Wicca. Wicca is a pagan religion. We do not follow the Bible in any way. We believe Jesus was a good dude, but we don't necessarily believe he was the Son of God outside of being a child of God like we all are. And it is a religion that focuses on the elements. It focuses on nature. If you look at the pentacle, it is the 4 elements and spirit. And then the circle is what connects and combines us all. And that is the joining, the joining faith. And the whole concept behind Wicca is that you do hear about witchcraft and spells, but these are prayers, just like anything else. Pray to a god, we cast circle. You have morning sermons and things like that, and we have rites. And so this is the main aspects of Wiccan. And the Wiccan Rede, the main focus of our belief, is very similar to the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you have to do unto you. Although for us, we're a little more hardcore in that we believe that Wiccan Jews can be back 3 times. So, if we just throw it out there, just in case. I think we like to cover our bases. I think that's what it is. We just want to make sure. If you're a bad person, 3 times you can come back. But that's the feeling. And there's initiation levels, and it's like in most other religions. And it was popularized. I believe it came into the modern consciousness around the 50s and 60s. With Raymond Buckland, Scott Cunningham, Gavin Von Frost. So for me, Wicca was comforting, a comforting choice, because there was 2 sides, it was duality. There was a god and a goddess, and it wasn't about whether you were a man or a woman. It wasn't about that. It was just these 2 aspects of God. And that made sense to me. And that's where that Wicca is. The elements come into play because we worship air, earth, fire, and water because they are necessary for life. All 4 of the elements are necessary to create life, to sustain life. And so the elements come into it and cast circle, and each of the directions has an element. So north has earth, south has, I'll do this, south has fire, west has water, east has air. Okay, good. My mom will kill me. She's going to see this later. I'm going to die. Because a true story, I was helping with my mother and father's renewal and fasting. They were renewing their vows. And I was acting as high priest. And I messed up the directions. But luckily, the high priestess, who's far older than me, also messed them up, so I felt a little bit better. But Wicca follows the idea of the elements being a necessary part of life. So we worship them. And so the worship of nature comes from it. Many Wiccans have vegetarianism or veganism because of that reason. I do not. I make nothing against those who do, it's just, but it's also about the circle, as well. Kind of comes back, and this is where the problem comes in with Wicca, I think. And this question is that Wicca is do unto others as you have to do unto you, but don't take any garbage from people. You have to defend yourself as well, and that there's a circle to life. And I think that's where you get a lot of people who argue as opposed to converse, because it gets defensive. And I think that it's good to not do that. To try to be open. And think we could be wrong. That's the weird thing, especially as a kid. Adults, we get set in our ways, but I think we always know in the back of our heads we could be wrong. In fact, I know most of the time I am wrong. So it's amazing. When I was 18, I thought I knew everything. It's amazing how little I've learned in 12 years, right? It's the same thing. We know we're wrong in the back of our heads, but when you're a kid, you assume adults know what they're talking about. And you assume that something higher than adults is right. But we don't. We don't know that. And so I think if we come into a discussion with that we could learn something new, I think it makes the idea of going back and forth a lot easier and a lot more comfortable, for both parties. Major religions, most of the religions like Wicca, Druidism is another one, the Druids as well, because that's where a lot of basis comes from with Wicca is Druidism, and multiple other religions of the sort. It is definitely pre-Christianity, and it definitely stems from those ancient traditions, and we try our best to recreate those as much as possible and stuff. Discussing religion with someone who does not want to change their viewpoint can still be information to us. I think that's somebody who still thinks of it and goes like, here, there's 2 U's in your religion. That just doesn't work. Thank you. If they're still looking at you like that, and if you just keep them, and I think this is the way I kind of come at it. When someone is so angry, I don't bother debating with them. I look at them and go, why? Why is Wicca evil? And they start going into it. And I'll respond, well, this is actually what we believe. If they come back to me and go, no, Wicca's evil, Wicca's the devil, I go, why? And if they keep giving me an answer, I keep listening. There's going to come to a point where they're just going to be like, I got nothing, and they walk away. You're burning forever, and they walk away, and that's fine. But by asking why, by being genuinely interested, because I am genuinely interested when somebody talks religion with me, no matter what religion it is. In atheism, I'm genuinely interested in atheism. We have conversations about atheism all the time. That is Ken back there. He's one of my tribe. And we have conversations about atheism all the time. I love it. I don't agree with it. Because I do believe there's something up there. I don't know what specifically. I hope that I'm on some red path. But I love talking about it. Because it's fascinating. And he can be really obnoxious about it. So it's really good. It's really good to be able to have it's good to have a conversation. I think it's important. I think it is important. Even for the people that are hopeless. Because they are out there. The real hopeless. It's still information.
All right, next one was, how did your parents' religious beliefs influence your choice in your faith? There's a couple of different, 3 questions in one here. How much of a role are you letting your faith influence your children? Or are you letting your children make their own decisions and come to their own conclusions?
That brings up, you mentioned about the idea, and this brings up an interesting point. You're talking about the idea of being pointless to force religion on others. And how you felt that kind of backlash, being forced to go to church. We use that term all the time. We talk about our religion as kids. We were forced to go to church. We were forced to go to Mass. Very few times do you hear somebody who calls themselves a recovering Catholic. Have you ever heard that term? You never hear that term. When you hear that term sometimes, they never say, well, I got to go to church, But you don't hear that as much when I speak to people who are UU. You don't hear a lot about Wiccan kids being like, I was forced to go to circle. We had to dance in the woods for 3 days. You don't hear that a lot. And it's funny, my parents for about 10 years or so, my parents ran a Wiccan, pagan, holistic health resource store in Waterbury. And my father was a licensed massage therapist, my mother and father were Reiki masters, and we sold candles and books and incense and all this stuff. Because of me, actually. They couldn't find one book by a woman called Greenwolf called Teen Witch, because they wanted to give the Teen Witch a book. They wanted to give it to me. I was a teen. They're like, you should have this, read it. And they couldn't find it. So they're like, you know what? Let's open a store. And that's where that started, and for us. And when we opened the store, Sheila Herrick, who was a dear friend of my family, who was a sweet woman who passed and left us, she came up to me and she goes, Daniel, I have a question. Completely sincere. I go, what? She says, we know how so many people find Wicca because they're rebelling against their parents for being Catholic. I said, yeah. She says, do you ever feel like that you'll rebel against your Wiccan parents by becoming Catholic? And I thought about that for a good few seconds. And I said, I think I'm good. I think I'm all right. But that was, and that's interesting, is that so many of us find different paths because of rebellion. And it's fascinating. I mean, how much better would it be if we found paths because of choice as opposed to rebellion?
Why are you rejecting Catholicism for another supernatural system of belief?
Fantastic. No, that's a great question. Because I'm not one who looks at the Bible and says, oh my God, people believe this stuff? I look at the Bible and go, oh my God, there's people who did this stuff to other people. The reason why I didn't believe in the Bible, and I, again, don't hold anything against those who do, but the philosophy, we talk about the idea of philosophy as opposed to religion, philosophy behind the Bible. For me, personally, there's a lot of misogyny, there's a lot of homophobia, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of death. And yes, death is a part of life, but death should never drive our mission, our goals in our life. My goal should not be, when I leave this world to go to a better place, my goal in this world, for me, should be to make this time, this place, the best place it can possibly be for me and for my family and for my friends. And I'm not going to do that because the God and Goddess tell me that I have to. I'm going to do that because they gave me the choice to be a good person. You know, Penn Jillette, a very prominent atheist, he says, you know, I rape and murder exactly as much as I want to. Zero. There's not some higher power for him telling him to be a good person. He just chooses to be a good person because that's what we do. And for me, Catholicism, the problem with it is that whether it's the early part of the Bible or the later part of the Bible, whatever one you follow, for me, it's a lot of vengeance. It's a lot of anger. And Wicca does not have that. Wicca did not say for me, and when I was reading all the things I read about, Wicca didn't say you must do this or else. It just put it out there. If you do good things, they'll come back to you. If you do bad things, they'll come back to you. But you should still just be a good person. The God and Goddess are not going to condemn you for all time. Maybe you'll condemn yourself. Maybe your friends and family will condemn each other. And that's why I followed the path that I did. And that's why I eschew other religions. Because any religion that restricts and restrains and condemns and belittles any other group, any of them, just never sat well.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap up the questions. I did have one more, if anyone has any questions for Danny, but I think we pretty much asked all those.
Yes, so much.
I think there was one, though, that is on everybody's mind. Rima?
What's that thing on your face?
You're in church, Daniel. It's a plant.
See, it's because I'm Mexican. Actually, I will explain very briefly. This symbol is actually, see, a lot of the Celts back in the day, I perform as a Celtic magician, and the ancient bards and the Celts, they wore face paint on their faces to tell them they were within a tribe. You'd see stripes for warriors and these other things for shamans, and this is my symbol for the bard. It started out as just a triangle, and I have elaborated on it over the years because I'm in show business. So that is what that thing is on my face.
We love you, Danny.
I love